Welcome to 1 Minute Theatre Reviews and my interview with Matthew Lewis, star of Harry Potter, Bluestone 42, Ripper Street, and now All Creatures Great and Small. And I'll be talking to Matthew about what he learnt from his co-stars.
But Dan Radcliffe did it, Matthew McFadden did it on Ripper Street.
What happened when he tried to get work after Harry Potter?
And I couldn't get work for love nor money. I was a nervous wreck in auditions. I couldn't remember my lines.
How he found performing on stage.
I'm 21 years old. I'd been in 8 Hollywood films. He taught me literally something as basic as this.
Does he read his reviews?
Someone described my voice as being excruciating.
What was the most frightening thing he's done?
I mean, it's something that absolutely filled me with dread.
What transformed his acting career?
And all the work that I did after that was purely, I stand by it, came off the back of doing that role.
Welcome to 1 Minute Theatre Reviews. I'm Paul Seven Lewis, and this is the first of what I hope will be a regular series of interviews with actors and other theatre people. To start with, I thought I'd keep it in the family and interview my cousin Matthew Lewis. Now, Matthew's probably still best known for playing Neville Longbottom in the Harry Potter films, but he's starred in a number of TV series since then, including The Syndicate, Bluestone 42, Ripper Street, and most recently, All Creatures Great and Small. He's also appeared in a number of stage plays, and I'll be talking to him about his work on screen and on stage, and about acting. Welcome, Matthew. You started acting when you were very young, and you'd done quite a bit of TV before Harry Potter came along. You were also a member of a performing arts group in Leeds. But did you ever get any formal training as an actor?
I mean, I wouldn't say formal training. The part of the performing arts group that I was a part of, you would go down for once a week on a Thursday night, I think it might move, but you'd go for an hour and you'd go and take lessons. And it was kind of stuff that actually, at the time, being a kid, I didn't really see, I didn't appreciate the use of it. But in hindsight, having gone and done theatre and things and worked with directors and had to go back to basics, I can actually see how incredibly useful a lot of that stuff actually was without even realising at the time. It was just a bit of fun for me, but actually a lot of it was very useful. So yeah, I mean, I'd have to say that I did have a small degree of training, as it were. But I think most of the stuff that they taught at Scala was the really important stuff. Was at that age was the familiarity with a film and TV set.
Once you got the part in Harry Potter, it must have been a good learning experience to be with so many great actors.
It's probably at the time I would have said, well, bits and bobs. Years later, things that I do, I go, yeah, I would not be doing that if I hadn't watched someone else do it. And it's stuff that you just absorb it like a sponge, really. You don't even realise at the time that it was important that I learned. And again, didn't appreciate it until I had since gone and done lead roles. Was how a person, a lead actor, carries themselves and sets the tone of the environment that they're working within. And that goes for theatre as well. I didn't appreciate that at the time. You know, you think about a director and you think about a producer and you think about all the people behind the camera, but a lead actor, you know, there is such a weight of expectation on their shoulders. They're carrying the film, the production, the whatever, and they really do set the environment. And they're like a captain of men. People look up to them, and in terms of inspiration, in terms of their professionalism, but also in terms of the safe environment that they create for other actors to do their job. And there's one thing that I noticed that I always single out Dan Radcliffe did, and directors as well who have their part to play. But Dan Radcliffe did it. Matthew McFadden did it on Ripper Street. Sarah Lancashire. There's so many people that I can pick out that have done this, and it's like no matter what role you're playing, whether it's the supporting actor that doesn't even speak, they're just in the background. It's to make sure that everyone who comes onto that knows that they have a place within that, and that they are free to explore and to experiment. And if it's shit, then fine, you know, that's okay, because we all do stuff like that, and it's and if 9 times out of 10 it's terrible, but that 1 times out of 10 it's brilliant. That's all we're looking for. And I've been very fortunate that lead actors that I've worked with have given me that confidence to do that, and have been incredibly generous with their time, despite the weight of the production being on their shoulders. And I've taken that on board later on without even realizing it. And I think it's stuff like that that I've absorbed.
What are the challenges of screen acting?
To hold those thoughts and those motivations in between the takes. When you're on stage, I'm sure we'll get into it, but when you're on stage and you're well rehearsed and you are in the piece from the moment the curtain goes up, it's actually significantly easier to find those emotions because you're being carried along with this wave. If you are in it, you're being carried along with this wave of the performance. Whereas with film and TV, you don't have that lead in. Mm-hmm. It's action, and you've got to be there. You've got to be ready. Yeah. You've got to be up to top gear already, and that is hard. And watching a lot of the seasoned veterans be able to do that and see their concentration levels. You'd be waiting around for hours, and then when they got on set, they were just ready to go. Mm-hmm. And it's quite underestimated how difficult that is. The people say, "Oh, well, you get to have another go." It's like you do, but there's many pros and cons that come with that stop-start nature of it. And certainly, I learned a lot from that professionalism and their ability to find and remain in character.
As an actor, how do you get into the characters you play?
I've been so fortunate throughout my career that I have worked with such wonderful writers. J.K. Rowling is a great example of someone who created vivid, well-rounded characters. But Kay Mellor, Sally Wainwright, just wonderful screenwriters. That when you read the script and you go, I know how to do that because it's there, and I know and that is such a unique privilege that you just do not often get. And I have to sort of check sometimes when I don't have the character all there laid out for me and it isn't obvious. Is that bad, or is that just because I'm not willing to put the effort in because I'm so used to having a great writer to do it for me? So I have to sort of check sometimes and go, no, we can find this guy. We can find him.
And how do you find him?
And that's the question, isn't it? And I always try and find a bit of myself in there first. I think that acting has to come from personal experience. It just has to, in my opinion. I don't know if other actors agree with that. I just think that to stay truthful, there has to be a degree of your own truth in there. And so I try and find, particularly with motivations of people, why everyone talks about motivation. Why is the character doing what they're doing? And I just try and find if that was me, if that was my goal, how would I go about it? How would I behave to do that? And then I can find similarities or dissimilarities. The things where we make polar opposite choices, but it's still useful for me to find where we would stay true and where we would veer off. And then once I found a bit of me in there, that's kind of my way in, if you like. And then a lot of just trying to find. I find that I've been fortunate as well in recent times that a lot of the roles that I've been able to do have been different accents, different time periods, which I find personally helps me. Finding an accent always seems to help me. I find that when I'm told to do my own voice, I can struggle a little bit because I struggle to, in the heat of it. Once you're on your feet and you hit the ground running, and the scene starts to take a life of its own, I find a little bit too much of myself creeping in without realizing, and I don't like that. That's when I start to go, oh, stop. That wasn't that character anymore. That was Matt. That was Matthew that just did that.
Yeah.
And I find that when I have a different voice, a different accent, that doesn't happen, or at least not as often. So I do prefer doing those roles. and so finding that is always kind of a big one for me.
Well, that was very clearly the case with your character Hugh Hulton in the new TV series All Creatures Great and Small. He speaks in quite an upper class way.
I mean, obviously he's from the north of England. He's from Yorkshire. That's the no-brainer. But he's very wealthy. He went off to public school in London, and he rubs shoulders with the elites. And that's just his upbringing. That's how it is. That's how it was. And so I with Hugh, there was definitely a voice that I wanted to find, and I actually think the writing's excellent. There wasn't a huge amount to do with that, but yeah, I wanted to find the voice crucially.
Do you ever have difficulty getting into a character?
You know, sometimes you don't, and you have to get on set on the day, or at least in rehearsals, and you say to the director, I'm almost there. This particular scene, I don't really get. You know, why am I doing this? And that's where the collaboration comes into play, and that's why I think it's so different every single time, and you can't really have a cookie cutter formula for it, because it is a collaboration. It has to be a collaboration, and
Yeah.
I really enjoy that aspect of it as well. I like discussion. I admire actors who can do it all at home, and they come in on the day and you just go, wow, how have they done that? That's not really me. I like the collaboration. I like the discussion. I like new ideas being thrown in, things that I've not necessarily thought of. I think there was a great pressure when I was younger. When I first came out of Harry Potter, there was a great pressure for me to have it all figured out. I was worried that if I didn't turn up on the day and have it all figured out, and to the point of that, if I didn't have the answer, I'd just blag it, and I think that was very detrimental to a lot of performances. And I think it got to a point where I realised that it was fine to go, I don't know, what do you think? And I think that has helped improve my performances a great deal. To admit when you're not quite sure and you work it through together, because a lot of it's about commitment. And if you're not certain, if you are blagging it, you're not going to be committed, are you?
Unlike some of your contemporaries, you've done quite a bit of theatre work. In fact, I think I've seen all your stage performances.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You did Agatha Christie's Verdict on tour, then Our Boys in the West End with Arthur Darvill and Lawrence Fox, and then that terrific four-hander, Unfaithful, with Niamh Cusack, Sean Campion and Rutger Mindas. Actually being in front of an audience and with no escape once that roller coaster of the performance sets off must be terrifying. Why did you do it?
I mean, it's something that absolutely filled me with dread. Something that I absolutely did not want to do, frankly. And it still fills me with dread now. And I've done it, on the West End twice, but it still frightens me. But having said that, it has completely changed my career personally. I think it has my confidence levels. There's so many things that I can attribute to having done theatre that has improved me both as an actor and as a person. And I think back to that first production of Verdict, which I truthfully did not want to do. I'd come out of Harry Potter and I couldn't get work for love nor money. I was a nervous wreck in auditions. I couldn't remember my lines. I don't know whether it was a lack of preparation, perhaps, whether it was just literally so afraid. I'd heaped a tremendous amount of pressure on myself that I probably didn't need, but had imagined, and I think that had been quite crippling for me for a lot of auditions and whatnot. And this theatre job came up, and the final Harry Potter film wasn't coming out for another 6 months. This was a 6-month run, and in lieu of any other work, I said, I can't turn it down. It's work. So I said yes, and I really wasn't not prepared, as in like I wasn't prepared with the material. I mean, I wasn't mentally prepared as a human being, let alone an actor. To go away for 6 months on tour to some towns that I'd never heard of in the UK, never mind been to. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was incredibly lazy. I'm still quite lazy, but back then I was exceptionally lazy. And I had coasted for a long time on a big budget Hollywood film, which was very easy to hide in. Really, we'd do 40 takes if that's what it took. We had big special effects, lots of makeup. We had it was very, very easy to hide behind $200 million. Less so on a stage in Wolverhampton. And so I went into this play and was wildly out of my depth. The director, I think, must have been like during rehearsals. He was very sweet and he was a great director. But he must have thought, well, I hope this guy gets bums on seats because the reviews are going to be terrible.
What were the reviews like?
The reviews for the show were fine. The show did very well, and every other actor in it was excellent. I was singled out for more than a few reviews as being, for lack of a better, terrible. I mean, there was someone described my voice as being excruciating, which was very sweet. But the thing is, the reason I say this is because none of it was undeserved. I wasn't projecting. I was shouting because I didn't know any better. I'd made no effort to learn any better. I thought I could coast through it just like I'd coasted through, the last few years on Harry Potter. And I read these reviews, and I remember I was in Cardiff, and I'd had enough by that point. I'd been doing it for a few months. Nothing was getting better. The reviews were equally as bad, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I remember calling my friend, my best friend, Nick, and I said, I don't want to do it anymore. And he said, well, do you want to be an actor? I said, well, I don't know how to do anything else. It sounds like I don't know how to do this either, but I don't know how to do anything else. And he said, I said, but it's not getting any better either. And he says, well, what have you done to make it better? What have you changed? I said, well, nothing. I said, well, then what are you expecting? And it was it was a real wake up call for me. And I spoke to a few people in the company about it. Not quite as forthright. I was still quite proud, so I wasn't quite as honest. But I was like, I want to fix this. We've still got 4 months of this run left. I want to fix this. So I had like some remedial rehearsals with the director, and we went back to basics. We were throwing a tennis ball up and down just to get the dialogue snappier. He taught me literally something as basic as this, that I'm 21 years old. I'd been in 8 Hollywood films, and he said something as basic as, when they're speaking, that's when you're listening and preparing what you're going to say back to a person, because that's what you do in real life. Someone doesn't speak to you, and then you stop for a few minutes, and then you speak back to them, because all that air that you've got, you just let it out in that big gap there. But that's not what happens in real life. Like, while I'm talking to you now, Paul, you're nodding, you're hearing what I'm saying, and you're thinking what you might say afterwards. And he said, that's what you've got to do. And so we did that with this tennis ball trick, is that the second they finish speaking, they throw you the tennis ball. And you have to be ready, to respond before you catch it. It should be going there. And it's something as simple as that I just never occurred to me. And so I realised then I had to be far more prepared with my dialogue. I had to know why I was saying it. Am I listening to what they're saying? Am I reacting, not acting? It sounds so basic now that the idea to say that I was 21 years old, not knowing this stuff, is frightening. But we did it. We went back to basics, and I worked pretty hard over those few weeks, and I watched the other actors on stage, watched how they did it, and tried to glean some inspiration from them, their energy. I asked about how does one project? which I'd never bothered to ask at any point during rehearsal. Again, crazy. And I learned these things, how to breathe even, and then by the end of the run, the last 3 months or so, the reviews flipped around, and I was being singled out as not being exceptional, but having a good performance, having actually added to the piece as opposed to being detrimental to it. And suddenly it just clicked. I can't really describe it. I think I remember one night just going, wow, that wasn't Matthew Lewis on stage screaming and shouting at everyone. That was that character. I was there. And it just clicked. And I enjoyed myself for probably the first time in the whole run. I enjoyed myself, and the reviews reflected that. And I think that had I not done that, I should have to think what my career would be like. I mean, the stuff that I learnt on that, the level of dedication, commitment, of preparation, and just actual basics set me up for the next few years of my career, really. And all the work that I did after that was purely, I stand by it, came off the back of doing that role, and that is why I went back to it, because of what I learned.
Yeah.
So after that, you did Our Boys in the West End to good reviews, and then Unfaithful.
I was desperate to do it, loved the script, and I met the director, and was just really, really keen to be involved in that. And then once I'd started it, I think it became very apparent very early. I was like, oh God, what have I let myself in for here? This is a four-hander. It's incredibly intense. I mean, you saw the show. I was playing a male escort who, had some pretty racy scenes.
I was in the front row, and I remember I was worried about how many clothes you were going to take off.
So was I, because I remember discussing it, and I think in the original production, the actor did do a full frontal. He did get everything off, and I remember talking to Adam, the director, early on, and he said, "We're not doing that." I was like, "Good, okay, good." But yeah, down to my pants, and so that was. But you know what? Weirdly, the play was so intense and took so much that actually taking my clothes off was the least of my concern throughout that whole thing. To be honest, it's the first play I've done that we're on stage the whole time. So there was no escape to go and go over some lines. Or one thing that I did struggle with, which took a little while, was that if you felt that you'd made a mess of a scene, there was no opportunity to go and get that out of your system, to go back into your dressing room and play some music, take your mind off it, just get that out of your system. And so one of the challenges I found with that play was letting stuff go. Was that if a particular scene hadn't gone the way I wanted to, I couldn't let that bleed into my next scene. Or thankfully, because there was a lot of angst and frustration, if I had it, I could use it to my own benefit in a later scene, perhaps. So there was a few little ways of dealing with that, but that was a new one for me to be able to do that. But and here's the thing with that is that it goes back to what I said earlier. That, like you said, there's no hiding there, absolutely no hiding on that stage. But it meant that the pressure that we were all under just forced you into a position of work, just work. We all wanted to work. We all wanted to make this the best we possibly could. And I was working with three fine actors that were just so inspiring to be opposite. Every time they'd do something new that probably the audience wouldn't have been aware of, but I was like, oh Christ, that's good. And now I've got to do something, and it was this. It was just like a game of. It's like acting should be, that game of tennis where when a really great shot is played, you have to make an even better one to get the ball back. And it was so enjoyable that we were having these tennis matches that no one in the audience could really tell that's what we were doing. But that's what we were doing. And afterwards, you'd be going, "Oh, I love that bit you did there," and they were like, "Oh, I love that bit you did." I was like, "Oh, it was so great," and we just really it was kind of this loving for the 12-week run where we just supported each other so much, and it was so enjoyable, and I guess just the idea of being in the trenches with 3 other people that close, that as terrifying as it was, we knew we were all there together, and we were all pulling in the same direction, and we shared that, and if it was a bad review, we'd talk about it, and we'd say, well, let's fix it then. What do we do? And it just that level of camaraderie, and that collaboration, I think, is what probably set me up in what I said earlier about I try and take that into my film and TV roles now, and I do turn up on the day as prepared as possible, but I want to get everyone involved, and I want to say, right, what do you think about this scene? And I want there to be a discussion. You don't have the luxury of 6 weeks rehearsal like you do in theatre, but I want to be able to say on a morning in a makeup bus or over breakfast, say, what do you think of this? How are we going to do this? And really make it a collaboration together. And I think that a problem, shared is a problem halved. And I think personally, maybe not every actor fancies that, but that's what I've learned from theatre. And I think that's personally improved myself as an actor moving forward anyway.
So now you're back on screen with a role in All Creatures Great and Small. How did you get the part of Hugh Holton?
So I'd been working on a film in New Zealand, which is out next month, called Baby Done. I got a call saying, would I like to read for it? And but I was just frankly too busy. I was working on this film, and I was the lead in that film, co-lead. So it was one of those where I was stressed, to say the least. So I just said, look, maybe when I finish this film, I can have a relook at it. But right now, I can't relook at it. But then I finished the film, and it came up again, and it was for the role of Hugh Holton, and I said to my agent, it's about a vet in Yorkshire. I've done a lot of stuff in Yorkshire. I want to do something different. I don't know how interesting a story about a vet's going to be. Like, I'm sure it's nice and whatever, but it's not the gritty, exciting stuff that I really want to do. And she just said, just please read it. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll read it. I read like 5 pages, and I was like, how wrong was I? I of course knew the original, but I just was so pleasantly surprised by how funny it was, how charming it was, how modern they'd made it, even though they kept it set in 1937. They modernised it in terms of the women were actual real characters, as opposed to just sort of the wives of, girlfriends of. So that was very interesting. And also, it can become quite an emotional roller coaster. It's not all warm and fuzzy, actually. So yeah, straight away I was like, okay, I've changed my mind. I'll speak to whoever. So it was Brian Percival who's directing at the time, and he gave me a call, and he sort of said, he kind of sold me the project.
Well, tell me about the part of Hugh Holton.
Although he's the love rival for Helen, I didn't want him to be a pantomime villain. I didn't want him to be an obvious antagonist. I don't find it very interesting. It's a bit obvious. And Brian agreed 100%. He said he's not a bad guy. He's not a mustache twirling villain who you immediately hate. Actually, there's going to be a degree of, or at least we hope there's going to be a degree of people who go, well, I'm actually Team Hugh. I'm not Team James.
No one who follows you on social media could doubt your love of Leeds. So tell me, when you're lying by your pool in the Florida sun, what is it that makes you wish you were in Leeds?
There's something about the city. As a given, I miss Leeds United, Leeds Rhinos, all the sports, Yorkshire cricket. Like I just grew up with sport, and Leeds is such an amazing hub for it that I really do miss being in and around that. But the city itself is what I love about it is compact nature. You know, it's a big city in terms of that it's quite sprawling suburbs and a large population. But I love the compact city centre that we have, and I love the vibrancy of it, and it's incredibly friendly. I found I do enjoy getting back whenever I can. You know, Florida has its perks, as you've said, with the sun and whatnot. But I would probably take Leeds if I had the choice.
Matthew Lewis, thank you for talking to me. It's been a pleasure.